Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for tuning in to Health Leaders, the place for peer-sourced and solution-focused insights for healthcare executives. My name is G. Hatfield, and I'm the CNO editor for Health Leaders. Today, we are speaking with Michelle Watson, who is the Chief Nurse Executive and Senior Vice President of Clinical Operations at Lifepoint Health, about the different scalable workforce programs at her organization. So, hi, Michelle, how are you?
I'm great, G. Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time. And as we, turn around into the new year here, this is a great topic to start off strong with. So, right out of the gate, what are some of the biggest challenges facing the workforce going into 2026?
So, G, when to put it into three challenges, it takes a moment to think about where we've been in 2025 and where we're headed in 2026, and just some three things that I believe will be challenges. When we think about, and we'll speak specifically for nursing, but when we think about, the workforce shortages that we've had over the years, and as we've made great strides in recruiting and retaining nurses at the bedside, I think the challenge is on the sustainability of keeping nurses. And, we see gaps not only in the bedside nursing, but starting to see gaps in the nursing support roles. And so I
Hmm.
think those are the challenges on how do we, grow this workforce and how do we sustain it. And this is also a workforce that's taking care of an aging patient population that has
Hmm.
increased demand. So one challenge is sustainability. The second
Hmm.
challenge, I believe, is how do we as leaders maintain the connection and the engagement for our nurses? And then how do we create professional growth for nurses at every stage? When we think about nurses who come to work for us from their first year to nurses who are experienced, how do we help them with a professional growth plan that positions them to be where they're at, to be passionate about the work they're doing? And the third challenge, I really believe, is in how do we lead a multi generational workforce?
Hmm.
And this is so fundamentally different than anything we've managed before. When I think about nurses entering the workforce today, they're entering their profession where they grew up in a fully digital, on demand world,
Hmm.
now working alongside nurses with decades of experience who are trained in a very different healthcare environment. I am one of those nurses who is trained in a very different healthcare environment. And I
Hmm.
think that's the challenge on it's not choosing one over the other, but the challenge is intentionally designing an organization where every generation can thrive.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's something like five generations are in the workforce right now, which I don't know if that's ever happened before. And the generational differences are pretty vast, as you're saying. So that's definitely going to be a challenge continuing into 2026. Um, so I wanted to get into some of these programs that you were mentioning to me before. Tell me about LifePoint Health's RN residency program. How is it addressing some of the challenges you just mentioned?
So at LifePoint, we actually launched our nurse residency program in the first half of 2023. And we saw in our own internal data, and we see this across the industry, that new graduate nurses are often at the highest risk of leaving their employment within their first year of becoming a nurse.
Mhm.
And we needed to understand how can we create a program that one is a great recruitment potential for us, but then also one that can drive retention, and through that retention build the confidence of these new nurses that are just graduated from nursing school and now are stepping in to work at the bedside. And so the RN residency program for LifePoint was created to provide this structured support. So imagine nurses working at the bedside for their 3 to 4 shifts that they have a week, but then bringing in additional structured support so we can bring them back into a cohort model where they can work alongside their peers, where they can have a very, they have their dedicated preceptor and really help them that continued support that you need in that first year of, learning your craft and learning how to be a nurse. That also gave us the opportunity to identify where do we need to continue to support the nurse residents with continuing education or additional skills. And most importantly, how are we helping the new nurses in entering our organization get connected to the organization with other nurses and really start to build that relationship.
So are there any outcomes that you'd like to share from the program so far?
So we have had significant outcomes from this program. As I mentioned, we launched this in the first part of 2023.
Mhm.
And in transparency, the way we scaled that is we're a 60 hospital acute care system, and we selected about 23 hospitals to run the first program to make
Wow.
sure it delivered what we expected. So
Mhm.
since that time, we have scaled the residency program across all 60 hospitals. And what we've seen has been significant. We have seen the direct correlation from when we implemented the nurse residency program until today. We have decreased that less than 1 year turnover, residency turnover by 65%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we have retained 86% of all residents that have come to work for us.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah.
huge, huge outcome. Really proud of that. It's also, I think, a positive. It has created a pipeline. So in this time frame, just in 2025 alone, our residency program has recruited nearly 800 registered nurses um, just in 2025.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah, those are some very, very strong metrics.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the success of that. That's amazing. So I wanted to ask you as well. You mentioned that there is a nurse fellow program as well. So how does that program address some of these challenges, specifically with the workforce shortages that we're talking about?
As we think about the workforce, we think about this career pathway. And the fellows program really was the second phase of how do we build on a successful residency program.
Mhm.
So this is our newest program. We just launched the program earlier this year. And as we think about the residency program, which is designed to support entry into practice, the RN Fellows program is intentionally designed to support experienced nurses. And this program is very focused on 5 high impact specialties. So as we think about these specialties being acute care, critical care, emergency, perinatal, perioperative, this program supports nurses in those specialty impacts to continue to advance their education and then
Mhm.
also positions them to be able to set for their national certification once they complete the fellows program.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm sure you mentioned you launched this earlier this year, so I'm not sure if you have like as concrete metrics from as you do from the residency program, but do you have any outcomes that you want to share?
Yeah. I do. We launched, just like we did the residency program, we started with a approach. So today, the fellows program is live in 23 of our acute care sites. We
Mhm.
have had 126 experienced nurses enroll in the fellows program, and already 3 have completed the program and have earned their specialty certification.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you mentioned it was 23. Was it the same hospitals that you chose to launch the residency program as well?
They were similar, but were not all the same. So a
Gotcha.
large.
Gotcha. Okay. So what is your strategy for scaling these programs? You mentioned there's 60 facilities in total. That's pretty sizable. So what's your strategy there?
I think our strategy is one that is deliberate and intentional.
Mhm.
And as we talked about, even with the residency and the fellows program, we really think about what does the field need? What are we hearing from our CNOs and our nurses that we can bring programs and pathways to their facility? And then we look at starting with small scale. And so 23 is, really a large scale, but we start with that group of hospitals and then we look to see how well those programs are adopted. We look to see are those programs driving the results that we expected. Then we take feedback from that group of hospitals and make modifications or adjustments that's needed. And then we intentionally scale that across the organization. If we were to scale a program at 60 hospitals at once, I think the adoption would be very difficult. And we want to make sure we're doing it with intentionality, but also doing it at a pace that the hospitals can absorb as well. And so I think that is the secret that we use is deliberate, it's intentional, it's thoughtful, and that thoughtful adoption does drive better outcomes than if we just did rapid expansion across 60.
Absolutely. And you mentioned adoption. How have the nurses been reacting to these programs?
You know, the nurses have been really great. They value the commitment to their development. And what I have loved seeing is their engagement and coming back with, we love this, but could we also do something different to complement that? And they've really, I think, been a part of how do we continue to evolve these programs that are most meaningful for those that's intended to support.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I love your strategy, and what you said about saying it's easier to do it on a small scale and then adjust as needed rather than just kind of jumping in because as you're saying that would be a lot more difficult. So for other CNOs who are looking to build a more sustainable workforce pipeline, do you have any advice?
I think when I think about building the pipeline and I look back on the work we've done in 2025, especially, I think we all could agree that when nursing is strong, the organization is strong. Almost every hospital wide metric improves when nursing is supported and we have a stable workforce. And three things that I believe are important as we think about multi generational, where we're headed in the future. One, we need to meet our nurses where they are and really have leaders be more quick to adapt to the multi generations that we're leading. So meet nurses where they are. Two, we have as leaders have to do a better job at making careers visible.
Hmm.
Help our nurses see what the possible future is from the time they enter nursing school to if they want to be a system leader. So, how do we create this visual pathway so that nurses really do see the career potential that is ahead of them for the next decades of their profession? And I think lastly, G, what I think the most important advice that I would give is for leaders to stay present. We have to stay engaged, we have to be visible, we have to round, and we also have to make those genuine connections. I think that is more important than probably any program that I could design to support the workforce. Engagement, grounding, visibility, genuine connection. And we believe that, nurses are the heart of care, and that really is what will drive the mission.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for your time. I'm really grateful to have had this opportunity to get to know you a little bit and hear your insights. And thank you so much to everyone for listening. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, G.